Hey guys, tonight we're heading into the baking heart of the ancient Persian desert. Not for glory, not for conquest, not even for some grand mystical vision. No, tonight you are an ice keeper. That's right. You in a tunic, in a hole, in the sand, trying to stop literal ice from melting in 40-degree heat. You probably won't survive this. So hit that subscribe button now before your eyes close and you start snoring like a Persian wind catcher. And while you're at it, drop your location and local time in the comments. Let's see how far this desert story travels. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The air is already warm when you open your eyes, and the sun hasn't even risen yet. You're not waking up in a lush oasis or some grand palace filled with silk and sweet pomegranates. You're waking up on a thin reed mat laid over packed earth inside a clay brick room the size of a large jar. Your pillow is a folded scrap of goat hide. Your view: a mud wall and a single sliver of purple sky where the ceiling didn't quite seal last year. It's still early, but in this job, early isn't optional. It's survival. You sit up. The mat clings to your back like a desperate lizard. You rub your eyes and groan softly. Your bones have opinions, and none of them are polite. You shuffle outside. The world smells like dust camel hair and the faintest promise of mint from the garden next door. Somewhere a rooster has the nerve to crow. You consider throwing a rock. You don't? You're too tired, and also you need to be civil. It's going to be a long day, and you'll need allies, even if they're birds. Your first task awaits. Descend into the yakhchal. It looms beside your hut, like a beehive from the gods. An enormous, domed structure made from special clay straw and the occasional crushed egg. You built part of it yourself, or at least you patched the dome after that storm blew through last season. The door is low. You stoop. Always. Inside, darkness. Cool, delicious darkness. You step inside and close the door behind you. The temperature drops instantly. Not cold, but cool. Like standing near a stone wall in spring. You inhale. The air here smells different. Sweet, slightly damp, and heavy, with stillness. You reach for the oil lamp and light it. A golden flicker dances across the rounded chamber. Brick curves overhead. Wooden beams reinforce the narrow stairwell that spirals down into the vault. You begin your descent lamp in hand, careful not to slip on the worn steps. Down here, under layers of packed insulation and a dome engineered to breathe heat upward and away, lies your life's work. Ice, not crushed, not shaved, not floating in lemonade. Thick blocks, stacked like treasure, each one dragged here in winter from the distant mountains, stored through spring and rationed through summer like chilled gold. You reach the floor, check the first block, still solid. You tap it, still humming that quiet, frosty tune only ice can sing. Historians still argue whether Persian yakhchals were the world's first true refrigerators or simply architectural sorcery. You vote for both. You walk the rows. Every block is checked. Nothing has cracked. No puddles. No creeping melt trails threatening the straw mats beneath. This vault your vault is holding. For now. Quirky fact, some ice blocks are marked with painted symbols. One has a tiny lion. Another has a winking face you drew 2 summers ago during a sandstorm lockdown. You smile at it. You're not proud, but you're not ashamed either. You run your hand along the wall, still cool, still dry, still yours. But above ground, the sky is changing. The pale purple of dawn is bleeding into molten gold. And with that light comes heat, and with heat comes problems. You climb back up, lamp in hand, knees creaking. When you step into the sun again, it feels like opening an oven. The air is dry. The wind is already starting to shift. Somewhere a child is crying. Somewhere else, a dog is barking at a cloud. And you're about to fight an invisible fire god all day, using only straw geometry and willpower. You know the heat is coming, not metaphorically, but in the most literal, sweaty, lung-drying way. And as the sun yawns above the desert horizon, you prepare to face your second worst enemy, dust. Your first worst enemy, of course, is melting. Before that morning, blast furnace rolls in. You head toward the top of the dome. The yakhchal's roof is smooth and steep, like a giant earthen egg, half buried in sand. The mud brick coating was designed to reflect as much sun as possible, but it still soaks up plenty of heat if you let debris clog the ventilation. And right now, the wind catcher shaft is stuffed with grit. You sigh deeply. Then you climb. The ladder creaks like an old aunt complaining about her knees. You ignore it. You've done this climb every week since your cousin accidentally threw a fig up there during festival season. It's your job now. You reach the top and squint at the shaft It's packed with last night's sandstorm souvenir. Dry leaves, crumbled dirt, a piece of fabric that probably once belonged to a merchant's headscarf. You grab your hooked cleaning stick and start poking. Dust flutters out like offended pigeons. You sneeze. Twice. Loudly. A passing shepherd waves. You wave back, brush dirt from your face, and resume stabbing. Historians still argue whether Persian badgers, the original wind catchers, were brilliant feats of engineering, or just glorified air tunnels with a flair for drama. You know which side you're on, especially when you have to clean them. You finish clearing the shaft and sit on the rim to catch your breath. From up here, the village looks peaceful. Clusters of domed homes, sleepy date palms swaying lazily, and children chasing a goat that clearly wants no part of it. Beyond them, the dunes rolling and endless glowing under the early light, like golden waves frozen mid-crash. And in the middle of it all, you, the guardian of frozen treasure. You glance down at the shaft, now clear. A breeze slips in cooler than expected. Success. You climb down. Carefully. Your foot nearly slips on the last rung. You mumble something unrepeatable and pat the yakhchal's side like it's a stubborn mule. It doesn't care. Back on solid ground, you spot your morning ice list carved into a thin clay tablet, resting on your reed mat. Someone, probably the apprentice boy, must have dropped it off while you were dust fighting. You read the names. 3 noble houses, 1 merchant guild, and a wedding party. You grimace. That last one's going to need more ice than dignity. You head to the storage pit. Inside the yakhchal, the blocks are stable, but they won't move themselves. You open the hatch and descend again this time with a rope sling and wooden sled. The steps feel steeper today. Your knees agree. You pick the best-looking block, thick rectangular, no cracks. You wrap it. Heave, groan, slide. It resists. You insult its lineage. It finally budges. You drag it to the surface and out into the courtyard. The sun is higher now, painting everything in gold and heat. You shade the block with a woven mat until the delivery boys arrive. They're late, as usual. When they finally appear, they're arguing about whose turn it is to clean the camel harness. You say nothing. Just hand them the block and the directions. They load it onto the cart with the reverence of someone stacking apricots. You sigh again, possibly for the 5th time today, and it's not even noon. Quirky fact. Persian ice was often delivered to the wealthy in summer months, used to cool drinks, store fruit, or just prove you were better than your neighbors. You watch the cart roll away. Wobble. Correct. wobble again. You consider running after it. You don't, because now there's a crack forming in the yakhchal's outer wall. You can hear it, a little popping sound, like dry bread crust tearing under too much pressure. You jog over. Yep, it's a fissure, thin, superficial. But if you don't deal with it now, it becomes next week's disaster. You gather a bucket of clay-mud mix meal and start patching. The mixture is gritty damp and smells like wet socks and desert moss. Perfect. You smear it into the crack and smooth it with a flat stone. A child walks by and asks if you're painting the building. You say yes. It's easier than explaining insulation. The child nods sagely and runs off to chase the goat again. When you finish patching, the sun is nearly overhead. You wipe your hands on your tunic. You look down. You now resemble a slightly burnt pastry. But the yakhchal, still standing, still breathing, still cold. By now the sun is no longer rising. It's raining, high, loud, and merciless, like a celestial overseer, with no concept of lunch breaks. The dome of the yakhchal sizzles quietly in the distance, while you find yourself eyeing the patch of shade next to your reed mat, like it's a 5-star hotel. But you don't sit. Not yet. Because you know what happens. At midday, nobles want their ice. Not for anything practical, of course. No, they want it shaved into tiny curls for their lemon drinks, or stacked into bowls to chill silk-wrapped grapes, or just displayed on a tray like a shiny brag. And you're the one responsible for making that happen. You trudge to the shaded side of your hut where the baskets and straw are kept. You dig out 3 palm leaf containers, each lined with waxed cloth and an extra wrap of insulating fiber. One of them has a hole in the bottom, your favorite one, naturally. You patch it with a folded fig leaf and a whisper of desperation. Then you return to the vault. The air hits you again like a sigh from the underworld, cool, blessedly dry. You light the lamp, descend the steps, and begin selecting delivery-size blocks. Not too thick, they'll complain. Not too thin, they'll melt. Not too uneven, they'll accuse you of chipping off pieces to sell on the side. You find 3 you trust. You know these blocks. You remember freezing them. You stacked them lovingly in late winter, dragging each one from the mountain caravan. Drop off with your aching shoulders and half a sandal. These are your babies. You cradle the first one into the basket, pack it with straw, seal it, repeat. By the time you haul the 3rd basket out into the light, your arms are made of overcooked lentils The delivery boy is waiting. He yawns. He is without question the laziest creature in a 20-mile radius. You hand him the baskets. He complains they're heavy. You smile. A very calm smile. He hoists them onto the donkey's back, slaps the reins, and off they go, rattling, bouncing, wobbling, toward the noble quarter, where someone is probably preparing to serve chilled dates on gold plates. You stand there, still smiling, until they vanish into the haze. Then your smile drops like a block of ice in a summer well. You drag your sandals toward the shady corner and finally sit and lunch. It's a bowl of lukewarm yogurt and barley soup that's been sitting under a cloth since sunrise. You eat slowly, carefully, like the soup might fight back. It doesn't, but it thinks about it. As you chew, a thin trickle of sweat slips down your back and finds that one spot your tunic never reaches. Classic. You sip water. It's warm, vaguely dusty, but it's water, and you're not complaining. Not after last year's cistern leak. That summer, you drank vinegar for 3 weeks and pretended it was refreshingly sharp. You stretch out on the mat. Close your eyes for 1 minute, maybe 2. Then Ice Master, a visitor, comes. You jolt up. It's not a neighbor, not a cousin. It's worse. It's the tax collector, in full robes, with scribe and tiny writing tablet. You rise, attempting dignity. He smiles in that tight-lipped, I know what you did last solstice kind of way. I'm here, he says, for a routine inspection. You nod, smile, sweat. He enters the yakhchal with you. Slowly, suspiciously, like he expects to find an underground casino instead of frozen blocks. You light the lamp again. He surveys the stacks, scratching notes into his wax tablet with painful precision. The scribe trails behind, murmuring quantities, types, levels of melt. You show them the neat rows, the insulated walls, the intact drainage slope. You don't mention the cracked basket or the chipped block you might have dropped while sleep hauling last week. After a long pause, the tax collector gives a single, slow nod. Well preserved, he says. No waste. You exhale. Just a little. He turns to go, then pauses. And remember, he says, without looking back, the palace is expecting extra for the New Year feast. You nod again. He leaves. So does your appetite. Historians still argue whether Persian ice keepers were respected craftsmen or simply very sweaty miracle workers. You now know it's both. Mostly the second. You look at the sky. It's blinding. You return to your shady corner, your soup now more yogurt vapor than sustenance. But you sit anyway. You chew a bit of straw and tell yourself, at least no one blamed me for anything today. Yet, you don't get to enjoy the relief of passing an inspection for long because the roof vent is acting up again. The badger, your faithful yet temperamental wind catcher, is misaligned. Again. This isn't just a decorative feature. It's the ancient Persian version of an HVAC system, minus the hum buttons, and the part where it actually cools consistently. When it's working properly, it pulls cooler air from above down into the yakhchal and pushes warm air up and out through the dome's vent shaft. When it's not working properly, your ice melts faster than trust in a village gossip circle. And right now, the vault feels warmer. You trudge toward the base of the shaft and peer up. No movement, no breeze, just a mocking silence, like the desert is holding its breath to watch you suffer. You grab your tools, a wooden pole, some string, and your absolute favorite repair instrument, a very long stick with a hook on the end. You climb the dome again, this time, with the precision of a tired acrobat who's still paying off his sandals. From up top, you wedge yourself onto the ledge where the wind catcher starts. You look inside and immediately see the problem. A palm frond has wedged itself at an angle, redirecting airflow. How it got there? Probably the same way your uncle once got his turban stuck in the date press. Bad luck and worse judgment. You reach in with your stick and prod the blockage. It resists. You prod harder. It shifts. Then, freedom. The breeze begins to stir, gently at first, like the yakhchal is sighing in relief. Then, it settles into a steady pull, cool and dry, like a whisper from the mountains. You grin, briefly. Then the stick snaps. You lose balance. Almost fall. Almost. You cling to the vent legs, flailing. Dignity evaporating, and somehow slide down the curved dome like a panicked goat on polished tile. You land in a heap next to a startled chicken. The chicken judges you. You nod in apology. Historians still argue whether wind catchers were perfectly engineered or just highly persuasive towers with architectural charisma. You're starting to think they're alive and moody. You brush yourself off and limp back to your hut. And then, just when your joints start negotiating for a rest, a messenger arrives. He's out of breath, dusty, and far too cheerful. There's a wedding, he announces. You blink. I know. He shakes his head. No, another wedding. Of course there is. Weddings mean music, dancing, fragrant stews, and nobles demanding chilled drinks in a climate designed specifically to cook eggs on stone. He hands you a list. You scan it. They want ice block, shaved ice, a sculpted swan, and one snow melon, which is neither snowy nor in season. You consider fainting, but that would be dramatic, and you already did that once during the apricot shortage of last year. You gather what you need, 3 baskets a block that look swan-ish if you squint, and your least favorite apprentice. He loads the donkey. You mutter prayers to Anahita, goddess of water, and to the donkey goddess of patience. You arrive at the wedding just in time for chaos. The bride's uncle has forgotten the lanterns. The musicians are arguing about tempo, and the soup too warm. Naturally, everyone looks at you. You step forward like a stage performer and present the ice. A cheer rises. You bask in it for exactly 5 seconds. Then someone drops a jug. It smashes. The block tumbles, melts. The sculpted swan becomes a swan-shaped puddle. You close your eyes, exhale, smile, and say, "That one was symbolic." No one laughs. You point to the second block. "This one's real." The nobles nod, appeased. You slice some for their wine bowls. Hand off the backup. Stuff a leftover fig in your mouth and retreat as gracefully as a man with melted poultry art can. Quirky fact: some nobles believed ice had mystical properties. Cold melon was said to improve memory. Chilled grape juice could reveal lies. You never confirmed either. But you did once slip on a grape and uncover a very awkward secret in the spice cellar. The sun dips a little lower. The wind returns. You pack your baskets, whistle to the donkey, and head back home. Halfway there, a dust devil passes. You stop. Wait. Let it rage in circles. Then continue walking. Your arms ache. Your brain feels half-cooked. And your last nerve currently being gnawed on by memory of that swan. But you're still upright, still working, still keeping the ice alive. And in this desert that counts as a miracle. By the time you return to the yakhchal, the sun is nearing its peak, the kind of scorching high noon that makes clay walls shimmer and sandals cry for mercy. The air hums with dry heat. Even the palm trees look like they're considering resignation. You unload the donkey, give it a pat of sympathy, and check the baskets. What remains of the backup block is slushy, but salvageable. You pack it under straw for later. You consider taking a break. You do not take a break. Because just as you begin to sit, just as your knees start to bend, one of the apprentices bursts in looking sheepish and slightly guilty. Never a good sign. There was an incident, he says. You stare. He continues. A block collapsed. You stare harder. He continues further. It wasn't me. Technically. You sigh. That deep, ancient kind of sigh only available to those who keep literal ice from turning into metaphorical disaster. You follow him into the vault. There, in the third row, near the western wall, it lies a puddle with ambition slowly devouring a once pristine block of mountain ice. You crouch beside it. Touch the straw lining. It's soggy. The angle is wrong. The drainage slope shifted. Again. Historians still argue whether Persian ice vaults needed regular realignment, or if apprentices were just consistently bad at physics. You vote for both. And this apprentice is making a strong case. You redirect the runoff using a small clay gutter and a hand broom, herding the meltwater toward the ceramic jugs you keep for emergencies. They're not just for waste. This water is precious. You'll use it for evaporative cooling later. The apprentice offers to help. You hand him the broom. He drops it. You say nothing. He picks it up again, very, very slowly. Together, you mop and scoop and re-level the straw. Quirky detail. Yakhchals were designed with precise geometry domes to redirect heat, upward vents for airflow, sloped floors for drainage. But all it takes is one uneven rock and a lazy apprentice, and suddenly science is soup. You finally restack what's left of the nearby blocks. You mutter to yourself as you work. The apprentice nods like he understands. He doesn't. Then, just when the puddle is tamed, the straw is reset, and your temper is mostly under control, you hear it. A horn, a ceremonial horn. You freeze. No, not now. Yes. It's the palace scribe, here for an official count. You dust off your tunic. Wipe the sweat off your face. Pretend the vault doesn't smell like wet disaster. He enters, flanked by a boy carrying an enormous scroll and a stone-faced guard holding a wax tablet. Master of cold, the scribe says. You nod. He begins pacing slowly, counting rows, noting details, asking questions like, was this block chiseled at full moon? And is this straw harvested from the northern bank? You say yes to everything. He nods, satisfied, until he gets to the collapsed block. You both stare at it. The puddle, the warped slope, the slightly guilty apprentice holding a damp broom. You offer the best defense available. That one was melting for religious reasons. Silence. Then, miraculously, the scribe writes something down and says, "Ah, the ritual of the third drip." You nod vigorously. Absolutely. Third drip. Sacred stuff. He finishes the count, stamps the scroll, and leaves. You collapse onto a stone ledge. The apprentice collapses beside you. You both stare up at the sloped dome, watching the light flicker along its curves. You say, "Don't tell anyone I made that up." He says, "Which part?" You say, "Exactly." There's a long pause. Then he says, "You want to know what really happened?" You sigh. "Sure." He leans in, says, "Goat." Of course. Of course. Apparently, the neighbor's goat got in. Again. It knocked over the straw. Again. It chewed part of the floor mat. Again. You stand up, brush off your tunic, and say, "From now on, I want that goat blessed or banished." The apprentice nods solemnly, which means nothing will happen. You refill the water jugs from the runoff, seal them, and carry them back to the upper level. These will cool the walls overnight, assuming no more goats perform unauthorized rituals. Outside, the heat is changing. Not cooler, just different, heavier, stickier. You smell a storm, not rain, no, just wind and dust and doom. You glance at the sky, pale, too bright, with a strange yellow tint. You mutter to yourself again. The apprentice says, "Want me to patch the vent?" You say. "Do you want another sacred puddle?" He shuts up. You begin tying down the straw coverings, storm-proofing, just in case. You've got more blocks to protect, and fewer nerves left to lose. It starts with a breeze, just a soft whisper around the dome. Then it becomes a murmur, then a shove. And before you can even say, "Not again," the windstorm hits. You've seen these before. Shamal winds hot and sudden, sweeping in from the desert, like an angry librarian who just found out someone returned her scrolls sticky. The sky turns beige. Your mouth fills with grit. The yakhchal groans. You run. Not away toward the storm. You grab the edge of the straw curtain that's trying to escape into the afterlife and wrestle it back down, hands scraping against dried thorns and loose rope. The apprentice, to his credit, is right behind you, though his face says he regrets every decision that led him here. You shout, "The ropes get the eastern tie-downs." He nods, sprints, immediately trips over a goat. That goat. Of course. You don't have time to chase it or curse the heavens. You pull the last of the coverings down over the yakhchal's mouth like a mother tucking in a child who might spontaneously combust. Then you run for the wind catcher shaft. It's whistling now, not a nice whistle. The kind of whistle that says, I'm about to tear your carefully crafted, passive cooling system into decorative pottery. You climb. Again. For the 5th time today. Your knees have formed a union and filed a formal protest. At the top, you find the shaft flapping open, its reed-laced mouth swinging like a door in a tavern brawl. You lash it down with cord toss some sandbags into position and brace yourself against the vent as the storm roars past. Somewhere below, a pot crashes. You pray it wasn't the water jug. Historians still argue whether these sudden desert winds shaped Persian architecture or simply terrorized enough apprentices to invent better roofing. You're beginning to see both sides. The wind dies as quickly as it came. You sit on the edge of the dome, panting. A silence settles. A charged post-chaos. Quiet. You blink dust out of your eyes. Below, your apprentice is sitting on the ground next to the goat. Both of them looking equally traumatized. You give him a thumbs up. He returns it with the limp enthusiasm of a man who's just seen his life flash before him. And it was mostly goats and straw. You climb down, check the seals. No damage. The vault held. The bricks didn't shift. The ice still intact. You give the dome a pat. Good job, old friend, you whisper. The dome says nothing, but you know it heard you. Now it's time for your one reward of the day, a nap. Not just any nap, a nap in the vault. You descend the steps again, each one feeling like a victory parade for your legs. The air is cool, still. It smells like straw clay and the faintest ghost of mountain snow. You find the driest patch of floor. Lie down and exhale like a dying emperor who just found out his empire's safe for another week. The stone is hard, but the cold sinks into your back like a lullaby. Your eyes close briefly, just to rest. Just thunk. You bolt upright. Footsteps above. Voices. Not yelling. Worse. Whispers. You climb. Fast. Pop out of the dome like a very annoyed groundhog. You see them. 2 men. Not from the village. Well dressed. Too clean. One has rings. The other's holding a reed scroll and tapping his chin. You clear your throat. They look at you like you're part of the structure. Can I help you? You say. They nod, slowly. We're from the Regional Planning Council. You blink. Twice. We're surveying yakhchals for potential upgrades, one says. Modernization, the other adds. You stare. Your heart whispers, don't you dare. They walk around the dome, murmuring. You follow, circling, guarding. Then you hear it. We could tear this one down, rebuild in brick and tile, use imported plaster. Your soul leaves your body. Tear down, you repeat. They nod, efficient, streamlined, heat rated. You nod, smile, and say no. They pause. What? You take a breath, then say it slower. No. They frown. You point to the dome. That dome's been here longer than your father's father's father. It's built from desert breath and winter sweat. That plaster won't survive a shamal. But this has. They exchange glances. We'll make a note, one mutters. They leave. You stand very still. Your fists unclench slowly. Your yakhchal remains, exactly as it should. Quirky fact. Ancient Persian architecture wasn't just functional. It was sacred. You just gave a speech worthy of a minor epic. You might write it into clay later, just in case anyone doubts your heroic arc. You sit. Look at the dome. Whisper, they'll never take you alive. The dome says nothing, but you feel the cool air drift from its vent. And for now, that's all the approval you need. Afternoon settles over the desert like a wool blanket someone forgot to wet. Everything slows. Even the shadows stop trying. The only things moving now are you, the wind, and that goat, who absolutely has a vendetta against climate control. You sit for a moment under your palm awning, sipping barely cool water, and pretending it tastes like melon juice. It doesn't. It tastes like ceramic jar and survival. But rest never lasts long in the world of ancient refrigeration. A young boy comes sprinting up the road, arms flailing like he's being chased by fire, or worse, bureaucracy. You raise an eyebrow. He skids to a stop, panting. Master of cold, he gasps. The northern caravan is arriving. You blink. Today. He nods so hard his turban falls off. You're on your feet before your brain has time to object. Because this isn't just any delivery. This is the mountain ice caravan, glacier-cut blocks dragged across miles of desert by donkey camel, and the pure stubbornness of trade route logistics. You throw on your sash, grab your checklist, and head for the edge of town, the boy trailing behind you like a slightly worried shadow. The caravan arrives in a cloud of dust and complaints. camels groaning, drivers shouting, a cartwheel wobbling like a drunk potter. And there it is, your cargo. Tall, canvas-covered stacks, strapped tight with rope and faith. You greet the lead handler, an old man who smells like mint and has a beard like an overgrown reed mat. He says, "We lost one cart." You nod. Expected? Had to bribe 3 toll guards. You nod again. Standard. Fought a lizard. You pause. A lizard. He nods. Big one. Looked political. You let that one go. He gestures to the blocks. You peel back the cover of the first. Still cold, still solid, still singing that sweet, ancient song of ice that shouldn't be here. You exhale. Then the real work begins. Each block is unloaded with care wrapped in straw, passed from cart to platform, then from platform to sled, and finally slid downhill into the yakhchal. The apprentice is there. Somehow. You're not sure when he showed up, but he's holding a basket and nodding too much. Careful, you say. That one's probably heavier than your ego. He grins, immediately drops it. You both groan, but it's intact. Miraculously, you arrange the new blocks in the rear of the vault, where the temperature is lowest and airflow softest. You stack them with strategic gaps to allow the wind to snake between them, cooling, whispering, preserving. You mark each block with charcoal symbols. This one from the eastern pass, that one from the winter harvest, another from a village so high in the mountains they freeze tears mid-sentence. Historians still argue whether Persian ice logistics were miracles of planning or a sign of extreme cultural priorities. You've personally decided it's both, and you're okay with that. As the last block slides into place, you step back. You close your eyes and feel the coolness, not just in temperature, in meaning. These blocks aren't just frozen water. They're promises of relief, of celebration, of status, of the fact that yes, the desert burns, but you can still bring snow to a feast. The handlers finish their paperwork, scratched onto a clay tablet with elegant flourishes, and disappear in a swirl of dust and complaints about camel knees. You stand at the vault entrance, hands on hips, admiring your frosty inventory. And then you hear it. Master of cold, urgent request. Of course, you turn. It's a noble's messenger. He's sweating through 3 layers of silk and panic. There's a fever in the household, he says. They need ice packs. Immediately. You blink. Do they want the block carved into tiny pyramids? Again, he hesitates. Also, yes. You close your eyes for a beat longer than necessary. Then say, "Fine." You grab your carving tools, a chisel, a scoop, a heavy mallet shaped like a judgmental loaf of bread, and select a smaller block. You slice, chip, scoop, catch. You wrap the pieces in linen soaked in rose water. Pack them into clay jugs lined with mint leaves and send them off with the messenger, who nearly cries with gratitude. Or heat stroke. Hard to tell. You return to the vault. Check the seal. Close the hatch. And sit again. Your clothes are soaked. Your fingers are numb. Your sandals have seen things. But your vault is full. Your job is done. For now. A passing neighbor nods at you. Good delivery. You nod. Any lizard attacks. You pause. Then grin. Political. Evening in the desert doesn't arrive gently. It doesn't slip in like a quiet guest or drift down like dew. No, it drops. Like a curtain yanked down by an impatient stagehand. And suddenly, the heat doesn't just fade. It flees. One moment, you're sweating through your tunic. The next, you're regretting that it's not thicker. You pull a woven shawl over your shoulders and exhale steam-like into the night. The air is crisp, cool, almost dare you say it, pleasant. You sit outside the yakhchal, next to the reed mat that functions as both your break room and your panic station. The apprentice joins you, carrying 2 cracked cups of barley tea. You accept one. Sip. Lukewarm. Perfect. Quiet now, he says. You nod. The sky above is awash in purples and blues, each star blinking on like a lantern on a long road home. And then, as always, there's a knock, a hesitant one. You look up. It's a small girl, maybe 7, hair in a crooked braid, holding a broken jar. Behind her, her father stands nervously. She fell, he says. Dropped the jug. The one we were chilling water in. You glance at the girl. She looks devastated. Not scared, just embarrassed. Like she's disappointed in herself for disappointing someone else. You stand slowly. Step inside the vault. Return with a single palm-sized shard of ice wrapped in cloth tied with a bit of date fiber string. You hand it to her. Keep this one safe, you say. She nods, like you just handed her a piece of the moon. They leave. You sit again. Apprentice says nothing. You both know these tiny moments are the ones that stick. Historians still argue whether ancient Persian ice storage was about luxury preservation or community rituals. But you've seen a girl cry over lost cold water. You know the answer. You finish your tea, stretch, and prepare for night watch. Because here's the thing. Nobody tells you about being an ice keeper. The sun may be the villain, but night is the trickster. Cool air settles, but so do thieves. You secure the hatch, recheck the vent ties, and light the night lamp. Its flicker dances across the dome, casting long shadows across the clay. You pace. You listen. You wait. A distant jackal calls out. Somewhere the goat sneezes. You assume it's judgmental. Then, just past midnight, you hear it. A scrape, soft, deliberate. You slip around the dome's backside. Cloak wrapped, lantern low. There, half hidden in the shadows, is a figure crouched by the drainage channel. You freeze. They freeze. You step forward. They bolt. You chase. Because you're not losing another ceramic water jug this month. The thief runs fast. You run faster. Not because you're trained, not because you're strong, but because you've hauled ice in July and survived it. You are powered by spite and a dangerously low level of sleep. You tackle him near the palm grove, not gracefully, but successfully. You land in the sand, coughing and triumphant. He's young, maybe 15, eyes wide, hands shaking. You roll off, groaning, then sit up. You trying to rob a yakhchal? He blinks. I just wanted a block for my sister. She's burning up. You don't answer. You just stare and sigh because, of course, he's not trying to resell it or carve it into dice or chip it for illegal cool melon smuggling. It's for family. You help him up. Say, next time, ask. He nods furiously. You hand him a handkerchief-wrapped piece and send him home. Then return to the vault. You mark the inventory. Deduct one small block and write a side note. Emergency compassion extraction. 1 unit. Quirky truth. In some Persian towns, keepers were allowed to gift ice during illness or celebration without accounting for it in tax logs, as long as it came with blessing and witness. You tell the apprentice. He shrugs. I'll count as witness. You pat his head. He winces. You sit. The night air now still. The dome breathing slowly. You lean against the curved wall. Close your eyes. Not to sleep, just to imagine cold. To imagine what it means. Not luxury, not status, but comfort, relief, and the idea that even here, even in the heart of fire, you can hold on to winter. You wake just before dawn, stiff as a sun-dried reed mat. Your back cracks in 3 languages, and your neck makes a sound suspiciously like a dropped clay cup. The apprentice is already up somehow with a bundle of kindling and a look that says he's been waiting to tell you something terrible. You raise an eyebrow. He clears his throat and says, "The governor's estate sent a runner." You wait. He adds, "They want ice." You nod. "And a sculpture." You sigh. "And they want it shaped like," he hesitates, "a lion." You stare. "A lion." He nods, holding up a tiny wax tablet bearing an elegant drawing of a very majestic, very unrealistic lion. It's standing on 2 legs, wearing a crown, holding a goblet. You blink at it, then blink at him, then look toward the yakhchal like it might swallow you whole and end this conversation. No such luck. You gather your tools, a wide chisel, a small pick, a curved scraper, and a steady prayer. Down into the vault you go. You pick the sturdiest block, one that didn't come from the last caravan. It's too fresh. You need something settled, something stable, something with the spiritual confidence to become a lion in the next hour. You drag it to the carving platform, a low stone slab under the shade of a fig tree. You sit, roll up your sleeves, and begin. The apprentice watches in silence as you chip away. First the head, then the ears, then the unfortunate realization that lions have a lot of face. You try your best. The nose is okay. The eyes, a little haunted. The mouth open in what could be a roar, or possibly a scream for help. You keep going. By mid-morning, it's something. Not quite a lion. Not quite not a lion. More like a vaguely royal cat with opinions. The apprentice says, "It looks like it has taxes." You throw a straw at him. Historians still argue whether Persian ice sculptures were for worship art or simply to distract guests from the heat. You're voting for distraction because this feline might be cursed, but it is fascinating. You pack it in a large, straw-lined basket. Add rose petals, mint leaves, and your dignity, what's left of it. The governor's men arrive with a fancy cart and 0 appreciation. You load it. They grumble. One pokes the lion's face and says, "It's melting funny." You reply, "So do I." They leave. You flop down beside the yakhchal wall, heart pounding, and ice shavings stuck to your skin like frozen regrets. You barely rest before the next crisis arrives a leaking jug. The ones you use to store meltwater for overnight cooling, one has cracked. Again. You inspect it. The split runs from the rim to the base, like a slow, deliberate insult. Clay fatigue. Or goat sabotage. Hard to say. You lift the jug gently, pour the water into another vessel, and set the broken one aside. You'll patch it later with bitumen and hope. For now, you set out fresh jugs, angle the drainage slope, and check the insulation bundles. Straw dry, bricks tight, air flowing. Everything relies on this machine functioning with monastic precision. You grab a broom and begin sweeping dust away from the vent slats. You pause only when you see something small and strange at the base of the dome. A tiny footprint, too small for the apprentice, too precise for a goat. You follow it around the curve, find more. And then you see her, the little girl from before, curled up beside the yakhchal's wall, holding her string-wrapped ice like it's a sleeping kitten. Her father is nearby, talking to a merchant. She waves. You wave back. She says, "I didn't let it melt." You smile. Good, you say. That makes you an honorary assistant. The apprentice gasps, slightly offended. She beams. You return to your sweeping feeling. Just briefly, like this job is more than hauling frozen blocks for feasts and sculptures. Like you're guarding a feeling, a memory, a little piece of wonder in a land ruled by dust and heat. Quirky fact, ice wasn't just a utility in ancient Persia. It was ritual, a token at weddings, a healer during fevers, a gift to prove you could bend the desert just enough to say, "Not today, son." You finish sweeping. Check the seal again. Scratch a new note into your inventory tablet. Block 23A. Lion. Possibly haunted. The sun begins to dip. The shadows return. The wind shifts. You light the courtyard lamp and sit again for a minute, a moment, long enough to remember what cold feels like, not just to the skin, but to the soul, and why in a world made of foam and sand, keeping that cold alive feels a lot like keeping hope. The sky shifts again, from blue to gold, from gold to copper, and finally to that quiet indigo that tells you the desert is preparing to shut up and sit down. You stretch. Your joints crack like ancient scrolls being unrolled for the first time in years. You think you might finally get to rest. That thought lasts 3.5 minutes, because there it is again, that unmistakable clatter of ceramic panic. You turn your head slowly, like a man who already knows he won't like what he sees. The apprentice is standing beside a shattered jug, holding a broom, a guilty face, and the eternal aura of "this isn't my fault," but it absolutely is. You exhale. It's not a dramatic sigh. It's the sound a cracked vault makes before collapsing. What happened? He hesitates. Then, with full confidence, says, "There was a beetle." You raise an eyebrow. A beetle knocked over a 3-kilo water jug. He nods. A strong one. You rub your temples. Historians still argue whether the real cause of infrastructure failure was environmental pressure or incompetent assistance. You no longer argue. You've chosen your side. You pick up the pieces. The jug is beyond saving. You toss the shards into the broken pot pile, which is now definitely its own architectural feature, and go retrieve a spare. But as you lower yourself into the reserve storage, you hear dripping. Not from the broken jug. From inside the yakhchal. You freeze, then descend. Fast. The vault is cool, but not cold. You kneel beside the second-tier row of blocks and press your hand to the stone. Moisture. Your heart skips. Not panic. Not yet. You open the vent hatch. Test the airflow. Still working, but slower. You pull out your read scroll notes and double-check your insulation map. Then you see it. The wall. A patch where the plaster has bubbled, expanded slightly, like a blister under the surface of the dome. You prod it with the end of your stylus. Crack. A thin line appears. You mutter a phrase in Old Persian that roughly translates to, "Please not today." You grab your patch kit, wet straw clay, and oil binder, and begin smearing it like your entire reputation depends on it, because it does. The apprentice leans over your shoulder. Is it serious? You glare, which in this light is quite effective. He backs up. You seal the crack. Smooth it. Breathe, then seal another spot nearby, just to be safe. Because you've learned one thing in this job. If one thing goes wrong, 5 more are waiting behind it in a queue. You finally stand up. Your knees wobble. The apprentice offers you water. You take it. It's warm. You drink it anyway. Then he says, "There's someone waiting for you outside." You groan. Quietly. Who? He shrugs. You climb back into the world of noise and stars and find a man standing beside the yakhchal. He's thin, middle-aged, and smells faintly of figs and old leather. He smiles like someone who knows secrets. I hear he says, "You're the man who freezes time." You blink. "Excuse me." The cold, the preservation. You delay rot. You pause spoil. You hold death at the door. You pause. That's dramatic. I'm just trying to keep soup from getting warm, you reply. He laughs, then leans in. I need you to preserve something. You cross your arms. Ice. He shakes his head. A body. You blink again. I'm sorry. My uncle, he says. He died this morning, but the burial priest is away. Family needs time to arrive. We want him kept, intact, dignified. You stare, then say, You know this is an ice house, right? He nods. Exactly. You hesitate. Historians still argue whether yakhchals were ever used for the temporary preservation of the dead. You suddenly find yourself participating in that argument. You tell him it's not traditional, that there are rituals, guidelines, expectations. He says he already spoke with the priest's apprentice. He says he'll bring coins and cloth, and that it's only for a single night. You sigh and agree, because what else can you do? You clear a space near the north wall, the coldest side. You double-check the seals, lay fresh straw, light the smallest lamp, just enough to keep watch without warming anything. That night, they bring the man, wrapped in linen, silent, still. You say a small prayer, not from any book, just something you whisper to the cold. You place him gently in the vault, beside the ice, not touching, just near. A brief stillness in the fire of this world. And then you step out, close the hatch, and sit under the stars. It's quiet now. Even the goat has gone to bed. You sit with the apprentice. He doesn't say anything. Neither do you. Because sometimes, even in the middle of endless heat and noise, you get to be the person who holds time. Just for a moment. The stars above you hang still, like the ice blocks below, suspended in silence and survival. You sit under that velvet dome of night, thinking about what it means to preserve something in a world designed to devour it. You eventually doze off briefly, upright, snoring softly, like a man who's just been asked to refrigerate a relative, but the desert doesn't let you sleep long. A sound wakes you. Plink. Then again. Plink, plink. You blink groggily and follow the noise to the side of the dome where the drainage spout is leaking in the wrong direction. You kneel. Place your hand under the flow. Warm water. Too warm. Too fast. You squint at the sky. No sun. Still night. But something's off. You grab a torch and head back into the yakhchal, careful not to disturb the linen-covered guest on the far side of the vault. The air is cool, but not cold. You touch the walls, slightly damp. You crouch and place a flat palm against the floor near the east wall. Moist. Very moist. You exhale. Slowly. Then you do what all ice keepers must do in times of trouble. You get out your diagram. It's a hand-drawn scroll passed down from your predecessor. Smudged edges, notes in the margins, a small drawing of a camel wearing boots. You're still not sure why. It maps every airflow, line, water channel, and straw packing layer of the dome. You retrace your cooling paths, your flow curves. And there it is, blocked drainage channel from the northeast quadrant, likely from, yes, of course, the straw packing you laid after the goat incident. Historians still argue whether goats were ever officially banned from Persian architecture. They should have been. You rouse the apprentice. He wakes with a noise like a pigeon hitting a window. "What now?" he mumbles. "Dig." He groans, but follows. Together, you haul up the affected straw. Underneath is exactly what you feared. Compacted mud and goat hair clogging the primary runoff. You scoop, scrape, swear softly. You rebuild the slope with clean clay. Repack the straw. Set new jugs under the runoff. Test it with a ladle of meltwater. It flows. Down. Smooth. Silent. Success. You sit back and stretch. The apprentice lies down flat and groans. Then a quiet knock at the courtyard wall. You both glance up. It's Layla, holding a basket. She doesn't speak. She just walks over and sets it beside you. Inside, dates. A few slices of melon. One single beautiful, barely cold cup of rose milk. You blink at it like it's treasure. She sits beside you and says, "Thought you'd need it." You sip. The cold touches your tongue like forgiveness. She asks, "Is it true? About the man in the vault?" You nod. She doesn't ask why. She just watches the stars. And for a while, none of you speak. Then she says, "You know you could leave. Go north. Take a job in the mountain storehouses. Cold all year. Fewer goats." You smile. But say nothing, because you know the truth. This job isn't about comfort, or peace, or climate. It's about stewardship. You keep cold in a world that wants everything hot, fast, and forgotten. And maybe, just maybe, you keep memory too. The apprentice speaks up suddenly. If you leave, I get the yakhchal, right? You stare at him. Layla laughs. The apprentice shrinks slightly. I was joking, he mumbles. You all fall into a comfortable silence again. Then Layla stands. Don't forget to sleep. You nod. She leaves. You return to your mat. Lie back. Stare at the dome. The stars through the vents. The faint whisper of wind. The faint rhythm of dripping water. You close your eyes, just for a moment, and dream not of snow or mountains or even cold, but of keeping something alive when the world tells you it shouldn't be. You wake to the sound of a bird yelling, not singing, not chirping, yelling. It's perched on the top of the yakhchal dome, squawking at the rising sun, like it personally blames the sky for its life choices. You sit up, neck stiff, dreams half forgotten. The apprentice is already poking at the fire pit with a stick, completely failing to make tea. You wave him off, step over a sleepy goat. Why is it always here? And pour yourself water from the night jar. It's still faintly cool. You savor it like it's wine made from clouds. Then comes the familiar thud of a delivery. You glance up. A small cart has arrived, dust trailing behind it like a cloak. The driver waves a boy from the northern fields. He holds up a sealed tablet. You open it and read, "Request ice for embalming. 3 jugs. Discreet." You sigh. That's the 3rd one this week. The desert is always full of life, and just as often not. You descend into the vault. You check the guest from the night before. Still peaceful, still whole. His family is scheduled to arrive by mid-morning, and the local priest is finally back from wherever it is priests go to avoid helping on days when help is needed. You shift your attention to the block reserves. There's a soft crackle in the air. You trace the sound to one of the fresher stacks. Some hairline fractures have begun forming along the sides of a newer block. Too fresh. Too quickly frozen. Too tightly packed. You begin adjusting, separating stacks, moving warmer blocks closer to the air channels, making room. The apprentice joins in this time, not dropping anything. A miracle. You explain the shift, like a sculptor explaining marble to a stonemason. Not every block is equal. Some want to melt. Some want to wait. He nods, pretending to understand. Quirky fact, ancient Persian ice blocks had names. Not official ones. But among the keepers, blocks were marked by origin, behavior, and personality. Mountain ice held longer. River ice was moody. Rain-chilled ice. Absolutely not to be trusted. You finish rearranging and send 3 jugs of melt-chilled water with the delivery boy. The cart creaks away under a purple sky, turning gold. Then the funeral party arrives, quiet, respectful, grateful. The priest nods at you. The family bows. You say nothing, just open the vault. They lift the linen-wrapped form, carry him gently away, and leave behind a small clay bowl filled with coins, herbs, and a thank you carved in soft script. You tuck it near the fire pit, and just like that, the vault is empty again. Of people, not ice. The blocks remain, unmelting, silent, stubborn. You sit beside them for a while, just listening. There's something about being underground in a dome of cool breath and ancient geometry that slows your heart and hushes your thoughts. You light a lamp, then extinguish it, then light it again, just because you can. You feel the weight of stillness, and also the faintest rumble. You pause. That wasn't you. You stand, touch the wall, the faintest tremor. An earthquake. Here it passes, barely more than a sigh in the bones of the earth. You wait. Nothing. You exhale. Outside, the apprentice yells, "Was that thunder or my stomach?" You call back, "Let's hope it's neither." You recheck the seal, still holding. You climb up to the roof for a visual survey. The dome is uncracked, the plaster tight, the sky a painted bowl of rising heat, and on the horizon, dust, travelers, a large caravan, likely traders, or inspectors, or nobles returning from a seasonal retreat with the urgent, desperate need for chilled grape juice and casual bragging rights. You descend, fetch the fresh wax tablet, and start preparing your intake list. You don't have time for a full rest, but you do allow yourself 3 bites of date, a splash of mint water, and a half smile as the apprentice asks, "Do we need more goats?" You stare at him. He shrugs. "Just wondering." You shake your head and return to work. Because every moment of quiet is just that, a moment. And in this life, in this place, you don't keep the cold. You fight for it. The caravan arrives in a tangle of noise motion and thoroughly unimpressed camels. Dust swirls like an opening act. Then come the carts stacked high with rugs, copperware, dried fruits, and more perfume than any reasonable human should wear in a desert. Nobles step down in robes, dyed in colors so rich they could pay for a new yakhchal if you were the kind of person who traded structural integrity for turquoise. You are not that kind of person. The leader is a merchant noble you've seen before. Darius, something long-winded. He walks like every step should be applauded. Master of cold, he booms arms wide. You look as functional as ever. You nod. May I present to you, he says, waving behind him, my personal physician, my spiritual counselor, my temperature specialist, and he pauses, my swan carver. You blink. Again with the swans. He hands you a scroll. Request. 6 large ice blocks. 2 sculpted, 1 swan, 1 lion again. 4 crushed into fine snow. All by sundown. Delivery to Villa Fountain. You stare at the scroll, then at Darius, then at the apprentice who is already mouthing, "Nope, nope, nope." You say, "By sundown?" He grins. "Of course. I have a banquet. You have ice. You fight the urge to lie down on the ground and scream into the sand. Instead, you nod, because that's what you do. You manage. You preserve. You endure. So you begin. You and the apprentice head into the vault and pick 6 of your best. 2 stable enough to carve. 4 dense enough to crush. You drag the swan-sized block out to the carving slab. You fetch the lion block, too, still hoping he forgets one of them. You start with the lion, because if history has taught you anything, it's that nothing melts faster than the nobleman's second request. The apprentice starts chipping ice with a wide blade, reducing the other blocks into crunchy snow. You coach him between your own carving strokes. Use the flat edge unless you want to explain to Darius why his fine snow contains thumb. He flinches, adjusts. Historians still argue whether Persian banquets were celebrations of harvest or endurance trials for the help. You know exactly which. The lion takes shape faster this time. Maybe you've gotten better, or maybe you've stopped caring if it looks noble, or not as long as it stands up and doesn't resemble a guilty goat. The swan proves more difficult. You try a curve. It snaps. You try again. Too flat. Third attempt. Somehow perfect. You exhale so hard, your candle flickers. The apprentice brings the crushed ice in baskets packed with mint and rose petals to help delay the melt. You inspect it. Cool, clean, fine. You both stand in silence, sweating. Then you hear the noble again. Are the iceworks complete? You nod. He claps. Glorious deliver at once. You glance at the sky. A low sun. Not quite sunset. Your window is narrow. You wrap the carvings in palm leaves, pack the ice baskets, and send them off in the merchant's cart, personally watching until they disappear around the bend. And then you slump onto the ground like someone just unplugged your bones. The apprentice flops beside you. You both sit in silence, gulping warm water and cold air. Then he says, "What if we build a second yakhchal?" You blink, then laugh, a full belly laugh, because the thought of choosing this life more than once is possibly the funniest thing you've heard all month. Then, between gulps of breath, you say, "Maybe one day." You lie back on the mat, hands over your chest, and stare at the sky. The stars are peeking out. The dome behind you hums. You whisper to no one in particular, "Let that swan survive the hour." Quirky fact: Persian nobles believed that ice in bird shape brought blessings to the banquet, particularly if it lasted long enough for guests to see it. No one mentioned what happened if it collapsed mid-toast. You sit up, stretch, check the vault again. Still cool, still safe, still yours. Then you spot something strange. A new crack, tiny, hairline, near the west wall. You trace it. Frown. It's not leaking. Not yet. But it will. Not now. Maybe not this week, but soon. You mark it. Make a note. Tomorrow, you'll patch it. Tonight, you'll rest, because the desert never runs out of sun. But somehow, you've never run out of cold. Not yet. And that means you're winning. Morning again. The light is gentle for all of 6 minutes, then quickly remembers that it's a Persian summer and begins its daily mission to melt everything you love. You rise with that familiar blend of soreness and reluctant pride. Your limbs ache, but your yakhchal still stands, still cold, still yours. The apprentice is already up, poking at yesterday's carving tools. "I was thinking," he says, "maybe next time we make a fish. Less legs." You grunt. Or we stop taking sculpture orders entirely. He thinks for a moment. Or we just get really good at fish. You wave him off and shuffle to the water jar. Still cool. You pour a bit into your cupped hands, splash your face, and whisper a short prayer of thanks to every shade-bearing tree and every chilled breath of wind you've ever known. Then the messenger arrives. Always the messenger. This one's new. Young. Sweaty. Clutching a scroll like it might explode. You open it. You read. Then you sigh deeply and profoundly. It's from the palace. You mutter something ancient and impolite. The apprentice leans over your shoulder. They want what? You read it aloud. 1 large block for ceremonial display. 2 smaller for medicinal use. 1 to be crushed and perfumed for courtyard vapor fountain. Delivery before second bell, accompanied by a note of blessing. Optional sculpted falcon. You both pause. He says, "At least it's not a lion." You rub your temples. Historians still argue whether royal requests were genuine needs or just competitive displays of seasonal control. You argue weakly. Still, you've done worse. So you begin. You light the lamp. Enter the vault. Select your finest block, smooth, flawless heavy. You whisper to it, like a priest choosing his offering. You're going to the palace. Don't embarrass me. You wrap it. Then pick 2 smaller blocks, 1 of mountain ice, 1 local. The mountain one will last longer. The local one smells faintly of cinnamon. You don't question it. The apprentice begins crushing another block for the vapor fountain, an elaborate copper basin that uses scented ice to cool palace courtyards for exactly 15 minutes before the nobles forget it exists. You draft a short note of blessing written with a borrowed reed pen. May this ice hold firm. May your day run cool, and may no camel ever block your water flow. It's not poetry, but it's honest. The delivery boys arrive. You load everything, carefully checking each bundle like a nervous parent on a school field trip. Then they're off. You watch them disappear in a puff of dust and royal ambition. You slump down on the stone bench. Your back cracks. Your neck sighs. Then, of course, another sound. Not a knock, not a shout, just a slow drip. You freeze, look down, and see it. A puddle inside the vault, near the northeast wall. No guests, no external heat source, just a subtle change in temperature. One you felt before you even saw the water. You check the drainage, still angled, still clear. You inspect the walls, still sealed. Then you crouch and run your hand along the floor. Warm. You frown. Pull out your oldest tool, a bronze spike with a flattened end. You begin tapping the floor gently, listening for the telltale sound of hollow space. And there it is, a soft echo, a void beneath the stone, not large, not new, but growing. A slow shift, maybe erosion, maybe pressure. Maybe the yakhchal is tired too. You sit back and sigh. Apprentice, you say. He peers in. Add subsidence to the list. He groans. You smile. Welcome to the advanced course. Quirky fact, yakhchals were sometimes built with hidden chambers originally for airflow or ice overflow. Over time, some became storage, others burial sites, a few just caves, waiting to happen. You decide to reinforce it tomorrow. Right now, there's a different priority. The festival. You forgot. The apprentice didn't. He's already lighting lanterns and unrolling mats. Tonight, the village celebrates the longest day of the year. A tradition older than most maps. It's not a religious holiday, not political, just survival. A way to laugh in the face of heat. And the ice keeper always brings something special. You retrieve your best block, carve it gently into small shards, place them in tiny clay bowls, then pour pomegranate syrup over the top. As the sun sets, people begin to gather in the courtyard outside the yakhchal. Lanterns flicker, drums thump, laughter rises. You step forward with your apprentice beside you. You offer the first bowl to the oldest woman in the village. She takes it with both hands, eats slowly, then smiles, and says, "Tastes like winter. Forgot it left." You laugh, because that's exactly it. That's what you do. You make people forget for just a moment that they live in fire. You sit with your neighbors, your friends, even the goat, and you pass around the cold. The celebration winds down slowly, like a cooling ember, glowing quietly beneath the stars. Laughter fades into tired hums. Children fall asleep beside half-eaten fig cakes. The drummer's final beat echoes against the dome like a heartbeat relaxing. You sit on the stone bench beside the yakhchal cup of melted pomegranate. Ice in hand. The apprentice curled up nearby, using a sack of straw as a pillow. The lanterns flicker. Somewhere a goat snores. You lean back and stare at the dome. The same dome you've patched, climbed cursed, blessed, and on at least 2 separate occasions, hugged. The same vault where ice defies the desert. The same breath of winter you've coaxed through flame and sweat and fractured pots. And it hits you finally. You've made it through another day. Not just any day. A day of nobles and lions, of cracked walls and collapsing vaults, of goat sabotage and storm vents and sculpted swans, a day of preserving cold in a world built to burn it away. Historians still argue whether Persian ice keepers were engineers, monks, or madmen. You think you might be all three? And maybe a little magician, too. You rise quietly, step into the vault one last time before bed. The air wraps around you like an old friend, cool, steady, uncomplaining. You run your fingers along the nearest block, still firm, still solid, still singing that soft, frozen song that only you seem to hear. You nod. Then you blow out the lamp, climb the stairs, close the hatch, seal it with care, not fear, not panic, just trust. Because now you know every creak of this place, every patch of wall that sweats, every whisper of the wind through the vent. And as you lie back down on your mat, wrapping the shawl over your shoulders, you whisper a little promise to the dome, to the desert, to the cold. We'll do it all again tomorrow. And then let your eyes soften now. Let your breath slow. Let the fire in the distance become no more than a warm, humming glow in the corner of your memory. You're lying beneath stars older than dynasties in a land of dust and wind and wonder. But here, just here, inside this quiet little dome of clay and straw, there is peace. There is balance. There is cold. You've spent the day moving carefully between heat and history, between tradition and practicality, between roosters and responsibility. And yet you did it. Every block, every carving, every carefully measured drop of meltwater. You've fought the sun, bartered with nobles, outrun goats, and survived the occasional flying pot. But now the world is still. The desert sleeps. Even the wind has calmed. And you, keeper of ice, guardian of ancient breath, you may rest. No more lists, no more cracks to patch, no more apprentice questions about goat regulations. Just you. And silence. And the dome watching over you like an ancient sky. Tomorrow, the world will warm again. Tomorrow, the sun will rise and demand its due. But tonight, you've already won. Sleep well, and may your dreams be cool, like stone, like starlight, like home.